Think about the power a single idea can hold, an idea so potent it reshapes borders, redirects the flow of wealth, and even alters what people believe. Now imagine that idea wasn't just spoken or remembered, but carefully etched into existence with ink and parchment, given a physical shape, a set of symbols, a life of its own. That's exactly what happened in the 9th century, when two brothers from Byzantium were tasked with an almost impossible mission: to invent an entirely new alphabet. Not just any alphabet, one designed specifically to capture the soul of the Slavic language, one that would become known as the Glagolitic script, and what began as a linguistic tool would soon grow into something far greater: a silent force that moved across continents, uniting kingdoms, guiding merchants, and carrying faith into the hearts of millions. It's easy to overlook the role of writing in history, to see it as a passive record of events rather than an active shaper of destiny. But the story of the Glagolitic script turns that assumption on its head. This wasn't just a way to write down words, it was an instrument of unity in a fragmented world, a medium that allowed diverse tribes and territories to communicate, trade, and worship under a shared cultural banner. Through this script, laws were written, contracts sealed, gospels translated, and histories preserved. It became the backbone of Slavic civilization during the Middle Ages, the hidden architecture behind empires, the quiet witness to both everyday life and extraordinary change. What you're about to discover is how one forgotten alphabet didn't just influence culture, it commanded it. We'll trace its journey from sacred monasteries to bustling market towns, from the hands of monks to the ledgers of merchants, and from the scriptoriums of power to the homes of ordinary people. We'll see how it faced rivalry and resistance, adapted and evolved, and left a legacy that still whispers through modern languages and identities today. This is more than a history lesson. It's an invitation to see writing not as dry marks on a page, but as a living, breathing force that once ruled a continent. So settle in, and let's unravel the mystery of the script that shaped faith, trade, and identity in ways that still echo today. But to truly understand the scale of their task, we need to step back into the political and spiritual landscape of 9th century Europe. The Slavic peoples inhabited a vast and varied territory stretching from the Balkans to the Baltic Sea. They were a collection of diverse tribes, each with their own dialects and customs, and they found themselves caught in a tug of war between two colossal powers: the Byzantine Empire in the east and the Frankish Kingdom, later the Holy Roman Empire, in the west. Both empires were eager to expand their influence, and religion was the primary vehicle for this expansion. The problem was language. The liturgy of the Church was conducted either in Greek in Byzantium or in Latin in the West, languages utterly foreign to the Slavic ear. This created a barrier, making the Christian faith feel distant and inaccessible. So when Prince Rastislav of Great Moravia sent a request to Byzantine Emperor Michael III, he wasn't just asking for missionaries, he was asking for a way to make faith comprehensible to his people. He wanted teachers who could speak to the Slavs in their own tongue, a strategic move to maintain his political independence from his Frankish neighbors to the west. The emperor saw a golden opportunity, not just to win souls, but to extend Byzantine cultural and political sway deep into Central Europe. He turned to two brothers from Thessaloniki, a city with a large Slavic population. Constantine, who would later take the monastic name Cyril, and his older brother Methodius were not just pious men, they were brilliant scholars and linguists. Cyril, in particular, was known as the philosopher for his immense learning. They had already undertaken diplomatic missions to other cultures and were uniquely equipped for this unprecedented challenge. Their mission was as much about geopolitics as it was about gospel. They weren't simply translating a few prayers, they were building an entire cultural infrastructure from the ground up. The first and most crucial step was to give the Slavic language a written form. Existing alphabets like Greek or Latin were inadequate. They couldn't capture the unique sounds of the Slavic tongue, sounds like the soft SHCH or the nasal vowels. So Cyril, drawing upon his profound linguistic insight, did something extraordinary. He didn't just adapt an existing alphabet, he invented a completely new one. This was the Glagolitic script. The name itself likely comes from the Old Church Slavonic word glagoloti, meaning to speak, emphasizing its purpose, to make the spoken word visible. Every character was meticulously crafted, a combination of elegant curves and angles designed to be written easily with a quill, yet each symbol was also rich with symbolic meaning. Some historians suggest the shapes were inspired by Byzantine cursive, others see elements of Georgian or Armenian scripts, but its overall structure was a work of stunning originality. This was no dry academic exercise. With this new tool in hand, the brothers and their team began the colossal work of translation. They rendered the Bible, liturgical texts, and legal codes into Old Church Slavonic, creating a complete literary language almost overnight. This was revolutionary. For the first time, Slavs could hear the scriptures and the divine service in the familiar cadence of their own speech. It democratized faith and learning, shifting religious authority from a distant, foreign-speaking elite to local priests who could now preach and teach with newfound clarity and power. The creation of the Glagolitic alphabet was therefore far more than a linguistic breakthrough. It was a masterstroke of cultural engineering, a foundational act that gave the Slavic peoples a unified voice and set in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the spiritual and political map of an entire continent. But with the script now created, its true power began to emerge not in isolation, but in its ability to connect. Picture the vast expanse of 9th and 10th century Europe, a continent of fragmented Slavic tribes, each with its own distinct dialect and local customs. A merchant from the coast of Dalmatia would have struggled to be understood by a trader from the forests of Novgorod. Their spoken words, while related, were often just different enough to create confusion and suspicion. This was a world before borders, defined instead by linguistic boundaries that could be just as impenetrable. Into this world, the Glagolitic script introduced something revolutionary, a common written language. For the first time, the diverse Slavic peoples had a standardized medium for communication, a shared set of symbols that could accurately capture the nuances of their various tongues through the literary vehicle of Old Church Slavonic. This was far more than a convenience, it was a profound unification. A legal document drafted in the scriptorium of a Bulgarian Tsar could be read and recognized as legitimate in the court of a Croatian duke. A merchant's contract written in Prague could be honored in Krakow without dispute over the fine print. The script provided a layer of consistency and reliability over a sprawling and often chaotic landscape, effectively building a paper bridge across thousands of miles. This linguistic standardization became the bedrock of administration, allowing rulers to issue decrees and collect taxes with a new efficiency that strengthened their control. It enabled the smooth functioning of diplomacy, as ambassadors could carry letters of credence written in a script and language that foreign courts would accept as official. But perhaps its most transformative impact was on commerce. Trade routes, once hindered by the babble of different dialects, now had a common tongue in written form. Ledgers, bills of lading, and partnership agreements could all be drawn up in Glagolitic, creating a trusted framework for economic exchange that reduced fraud and fostered a new level of commercial trust. This shared written language did more than just facilitate transactions. It began to weave a collective identity. People who might have identified solely as Moravians or Serbs now also shared a literary culture, a sense that they were part of a larger Slavic world with a common heritage and a unified voice. The script became the invisible glue holding together a nascent civilization, proving that the power to standardize language is, in many ways, the power to build a continent. And this bridge of shared language did more than just connect markets and courts. It paved the way for something even more profound, a spiritual revolution. For the Glagolitic script's true power wasn't just in recording trade deals or royal decrees. It was in its ability to give an entire people direct access to the divine. Before its arrival, Christianity in Slavic lands was a faith heard but not fully understood, a ritual performed in the mysterious, imposing tones of Greek or Latin. The sacred words of the Mass, the Psalms, the Gospels, these were the exclusive domain of foreign priests, creating a spiritual hierarchy where understanding was a privilege, not a right. Cyril and Methodius changed all of that. Their translation of the Bible and essential liturgical texts into Old Church Slavonic was a radical act of democratization. Suddenly, the Word of God wasn't locked away in a foreign tongue. It resonated with the familiar sounds of everyday speech. A farmer could now hear the parable of the sower in a language that mirrored his own, making its message immediate and personal. A mother could understand a prayer for her family. This wasn't a simple translation. It was an act of cultural incarnation, making the Christian faith feel native, intimate, and deeply authentic to the Slavic soul. This shift in religious practice had immediate and powerful consequences. It empowered a new class of local clergy, men who could preach, teach, and counsel in the vernacular. These priests weren't distant figures relying on interpreters. They were community leaders who could connect on a fundamental level, explaining complex theological concepts in terms everyone could grasp. This dramatically reduced the influence of Greek and Latin-speaking religious authorities, shifting the center of spiritual gravity from foreign powers to local communities. It gave Slavic rulers a powerful tool for fostering a distinct religious identity that supported their political autonomy. The primary engines for this spiritual and literary revolution were the monasteries. Within their quiet scriptoria, a dedicated army of monks became the guardians of the Glagolitic script. They didn't just copy texts, they lived them. Each monastery became a vibrant center of learning, a school where young men were trained not only in piety but in the very art of writing. They learned to shape the elegant Glagolitic characters with quills on parchment, to illuminate manuscripts with brilliant colors and gold leaf, turning each book into a sacred object of beauty and power. These were not mere copying machines. They were intellectuals preserving and expanding a literary culture that included religious texts, historical chronicles, and even early legal codes. Through this relentless work, the script became woven into the very fabric of daily spiritual life. It was present in the massive gospel books resting on the altar, in the breviaries used for daily prayers, and in the hymns sung during services. The act of writing and reading Glagolitic became, in itself, a form of devotion. This deep embedding ensured the script's survival through centuries of political upheaval. Even when secular powers rose and fell, the monasteries remained, safeguarding this linguistic treasure. The Glagolitic script, therefore, became much more than a writing system. It became the sacred vessel for an entire people's faith, a unifying force that gave them a direct line to the divine and a powerful sense of their own spiritual identity. Now consider the bustling port of Dubrovnik on the Adriatic Sea, or the busy river markets of Novgorod far to the north. In these hubs of medieval commerce, trust was the most valuable currency, and nothing built trust like a reliable written record. This is where the Glagolitic script transformed from a cultural and religious tool into a powerful economic engine. Picture a merchant from Krakow agreeing to a shipment of wax and fur from a supplier in Prague. A spoken agreement was vulnerable to faulty memory or outright deception, but a contract written clearly in Glagolitic created an unshakable record. Both parties could read the terms, the quantities, and the agreed-upon prices, and this shared understanding minimized disputes and built a reputation for fairness that encouraged repeat business. The script became the silent, indispensable partner in every major transaction, from the grandest trade caravan to the most local market stall. This standardization went far beyond simple receipts. The Glagolitic script enabled the creation of sophisticated commercial instruments that were the lifeblood of long-distance trade. Merchants could now issue letters of credit, allowing a business partner in one city to withdraw funds from an associate in another, all documented in the common script. Inventory lists became more accurate, allowing for better planning and reducing costly overstock or shortages. Customs officials at busy border crossings and port authorities could efficiently log imports and exports, calculating tariffs with a new level of consistency that filled royal coffers and funded infrastructure. This administrative efficiency didn't just smooth existing trade, it actively stimulated it. Safer, more predictable commercial environments attracted more merchants, leading to a virtuous cycle of economic growth. Trade routes that utilized the script became more prosperous and therefore more dominant, further entrenching Glagolitic's role as the language of commerce across a vast economic network. Perhaps most significantly, the script provided the foundational language for law. As trade grew more complex, so did the need for regulations to govern it. Local assemblies and rulers began to codify commercial laws, rules governing weights and measures, standards for commodity quality, protocols for resolving disputes between merchants. These legal codes were drafted and disseminated in Glagolitic, creating a unified legal framework that could be understood from the Baltic to the Black Sea. A merchant traveling from Zadar to Kiev could operate with confidence, knowing the basic rules of business were written in a script he could read and were enforced by authorities who recognized its authority. This legal standardization protected against exploitation and fraud, encouraging even small-scale traders and artisans to engage in commerce beyond their immediate village. The script, therefore, didn't just serve the economy, it actively built and protected it, weaving itself so thoroughly into the fabric of daily economic life that it became as essential as the coins in a merchant's purse or the goods on his wagon. Beyond the bustling marketplaces and quiet monasteries, the Glagolitic script found its way into the very halls of power, becoming an indispensable instrument for rulers seeking to solidify their authority. A king's mandate was not just proclaimed by the sword, it was etched into permanence with ink. By commissioning official documents in this distinct Slavic script, a ruler did more than communicate, he made a powerful statement. A royal decree written in Glagolitic was instantly recognizable as a product of his court, a symbol of his sovereignty that could be disseminated across his lands, carrying his will to the farthest villages. This was a dramatic shift from relying on the Latin or Greek scripts of rival empires, which could make a decree feel foreign or imposed. Using Glagolitic made the authority feel local, legitimate, and inherently Slavic. It projected an image of a sophisticated, organized, and independent administration, one that was every bit as cultured and capable as the great empires to the east and west. This was particularly crucial for newly Christianized and consolidated states like Bulgaria under Tsar Simon the Great or the kingdoms of Croatia. These rulers were engaged in a delicate balancing act, embracing Christianity and its literate culture while fiercely guarding their political autonomy. Adopting the Glagolitic script for law-making was a masterstroke in this endeavor. It allowed them to draft comprehensive legal codes like the Zakon Sudni Liudum that applied a unified set of laws across territories often populated by diverse tribes with their own ancient customs. A judgment recorded in Glagolitic in a Bulgarian court carried the same weight and meaning as one in Moravia, creating a consistent legal reality that reinforced the idea of a single, cohesive realm under one ruler's law. Scribes in royal chanceries became vital functionaries of the state, their quills transforming the spoken word of the court into binding, written records of land grants, tax obligations, and diplomatic treaties. This created a durable bureaucracy that could outlive any single monarch, giving the state itself a permanent memory and a stronger institutional foundation. Perhaps most importantly, the script served as a potent symbol of cultural and political self-determination. For a Slavic ruler, using Glagolitic was a bold declaration of independence from both Constantinople and Rome. It was a refusal to be a mere cultural satellite of Byzantium or a vassal of the Holy Roman Empire. They were asserting that they possessed their own unique vehicle for governance, faith, and high culture, one that required no permission or validation from abroad. This symbolic power cannot be overstated. In a world where political legitimacy was often derived from association with older, established empires, the Glagolitic script provided a powerful alternative, legitimacy derived from a distinct national identity. It became the written embodiment of the state, a tool that didn't just record power but actively constructed and consolidated it, weaving together disparate duchies and provinces into kingdoms that could stand on their own terms. Yet beyond the cold pragmatism of law and the sacred weight of scripture, the Glagolitic script performed its most subtle and enduring magic in the realm of the human spirit. It gave a scattered collection of tribes a shared mirror in which to see themselves, a common voice with which to sing their own story. Before its arrival, the cultural landscape of the Slavic world was a patchwork of local oral traditions, heroic tales, ancestral myths, and folk wisdom passed down through generations, vulnerable to change and eventual loss. The script provided the means to capture these fleeting echoes, to weave them into a permanent tapestry of shared identity. Scribes and scholars began to use Glagolitic not only for translating foreign texts, but for composing original works that celebrated a distinctly Slavic worldview. They wrote down epic poetry that immortalized legendary heroes and historic battles, creating a pantheon of figures that belonged to all Slavs, not just one region. They compiled chronicles that traced a common history, linking the destinies of Bulgarians, Moravians, Croats, and Serbs into a grand, interconnected narrative. This was the birth of a national literature, and it served a powerful purpose. It fostered a profound sense of belonging and collective pride. A nobleman in Bohemia and a monk in Ohrid could read the same tale and feel a kinship that transcended the vast distance between them, recognizing a shared heritage that distinguished them from their German or Byzantine neighbors. The monasteries, once again, were the beating heart of this cultural awakening. Within their Scriptoria, the act of writing transformed into high art. Monks devoted countless hours to producing illuminated manuscripts that were far more than mere books. They were breathtaking objects of devotion and cultural pride. Using vibrant pigments from crushed minerals and precious gold leaf, they adorned the Glagolitic letters with intricate geometric patterns, floral motifs, and vivid illustrations depicting scenes from the lives of saints or local rulers. The script itself became part of the artwork, each character a beautifully crafted symbol. Volumes like the Codex Asimanianus are stunning testaments to this craftsmanship, where the text is so meticulously and artistically rendered that the page itself feels sacred. These manuscripts became cherished treasures, passed down through generations and often housed in church altars as the most valuable possessions of a community. They were not hidden away but displayed during important ceremonies, their visual splendor reinforcing the majesty of the words they contained and the culture they represented. This artistic celebration of the script elevated it from a practical tool to an iconic symbol, a visual shorthand for Slavic ingenuity, resilience, and spiritual depth. Ultimately, the Glagolitic alphabet became a powerful unifying banner. In a world where daily life was defined by local loyalties to a village, a chieftain, or a tribe, the script provided a larger, more abstract loyalty to a shared civilization. It was a constant, visible reminder that despite different dialects and regional customs, the people who used this script were part of a single, sophisticated cultural family. It was the glue that held together a common identity, allowing a Croatian king, a Bulgarian scholar, and a Moravian merchant to all look at the same unique characters and see a reflection of themselves. This cultural unity, forged in ink and parchment, proved to be one of the script's most enduring legacies, creating a sense of shared destiny that would resonate for centuries to come. To truly appreciate the genius of the Glagolitic script, you have to look at it not just as a system of symbols, but as a masterpiece of intentional design, where every curve and angle served a distinct purpose. Unlike the angular runes of the north or the stately block letters of Latin, Glagolitic characters flow across the page with a unique, almost organic quality. They are a symphony of loops, circles, and elegant curves, interconnected in a way that feels both ancient and surprisingly modern. This wasn't an accident. The script's creators understood the physical act of writing in the 9th century, which was done with a sharpened quill on prepared animal skin. The curvilinear forms were meticulously crafted to suit this tool, allowing a scribe's hand to move smoothly without the constant lifting and sharp angle changes required by other alphabets. This design minimized the chance of the quill catching or tearing the precious parchment, making the process of copying long texts faster and far more efficient. It was, in essence, an ergonomic innovation, a writing system built for the comfort and productivity of the scribe who would bring it to life, but its brilliance extended far beyond mere practicality. Each character was a precise phonetic instrument, engineered to capture the full richness of the spoken Slavic language, where the Latin alphabet often struggled, forcing Slavic sounds to fit into ill-suited Roman letters. Glagolitic was built from the ground up to be a perfect match. It had distinct letters for unique Slavic sounds like the soft SHCH or the nasal vowels, sounds that were simply unrepresentable in other scripts without awkward combinations. This phonetic accuracy was revolutionary. It meant that for the first time, a Slavic speaker could see their language written down and have it read back with perfect clarity and correct pronunciation. This eliminated ambiguity in both sacred liturgy and legal documents, ensuring that the word of God or the decree of a king could be transmitted without distortion. The script wasn't just a tool for recording language, it was a high-fidelity recording device for the human voice, preserving its nuances with stunning precision for future generations. This combination of functional elegance and phonetic perfection made the script incredibly versatile. In the hands of a busy merchant, it was a tool of commerce, its clear forms allowing for the quick drafting of contracts and ledgers that were easy to read and hard to misinterpret. But in the serene silence of a monastic scriptorium, this same alphabet became a canvas for breathtaking artistic expression. Scribes, viewing their work as an act of devotion, transformed the functional letters into objects of profound beauty. They elaborated the basic forms with intricate geometric patterns, wove them into elaborate initials that framed miniature paintings of saints and biblical scenes, and lavished them with brilliant inks and gold leaf. A page from a Glagolitic gospel book is not just text, it is a woven tapestry of faith and art, where the holy words and their beautiful container become one inseparable sacred object. This artistic potential elevated the script's status, making it worthy of the most important texts and the most formal court documents. Its very appearance on a page signaled importance, reverence, and cultural sophistication. The fact that a single alphabet could be both so pragmatically useful in a dusty marketplace and so exquisitely beautiful on a church altar is a testament to the profound design mastery of its creators, a duality that secured its place as the preferred script for every aspect of Slavic life, from the most mundane to the most divine. Imagine the quiet of a medieval monastery just before dawn. In a room called the Scriptorium, the only sounds are the gentle scratching of a quill and the soft breath of a monk bent over a sheet of parchment. This seemingly humble scene was, in fact, one of the most critical operations in the entire Glagolitic empire of letters. While kings waged wars and merchants moved goods, it was within these peaceful walls that the script's very survival was ensured, day after painstaking day. The monastic Scriptoria were far more than just writing rooms. They were the power plants of Slavic culture, generating and distributing the intellectual energy that would illuminate a continent for centuries. The work undertaken here was a sacred duty, viewed by the monks as a form of prayer made visible. Copying a text was not a mechanical act but a spiritual exercise. A scribe would begin with prayer, preparing his mind and soul for the task of transmitting holy words. The materials themselves were precious and required immense effort to produce. Parchment was made from the skins of calves, sheep, or goats, soaked, scraped, and stretched taut. Inks were crafted from an alchemy of oak galls, iron salts, and gum arabic, while brilliant pigments for illumination were ground from minerals like lapis lazuli for deep blues or malachite for vibrant greens, often imported from great distances at significant cost. The quill, usually taken from a goose or swan, had to be carefully cut and shaped for writing. This was a world where every single component, from the animal skin to the feather, was a product of deliberate, skilled labor. The process of creating a single manuscript could take months or even years. The scribe's primary goal was accuracy. A single mistake could mean hours of work to carefully scrape the ink from the parchment with a knife and rewrite the section. But beyond mere accuracy, the most gifted scribes were artists. They transformed the functional Glagolitic characters into breathtaking works of art through illumination. Initial letters would blossom into intricate geometric designs or vine-like tendrils that curled around the edges of the text. Some manuscripts featured full-page miniatures depicting evangelists or saints, their faces serene and their robes rendered in dazzling color and gold leaf. These illuminated texts, like the famous Codex Zografensis, were more than books. They were objects of veneration, believed to hold not just the word of God, but a spark of the divine beauty itself. Their creation was an act of devotion that blended intellectual rigor with artistic genius, but the scriptorium's role extended beyond production to education. It was a school where the intricate art of Glagolitic was passed down to a new generation. An experienced scribe would mentor novices, teaching them first to form the elegant letters correctly, then to understand the complex abbreviations used to save space on expensive parchment, and finally, for the most talented, the advanced skills of illumination and binding. This ensured that the knowledge was not a static relic but a living tradition, constantly renewed. These monasteries thus became the first centers of higher learning for the Slavic world, nurturing not just copyists but scholars, translators, and historians who could compose original works in addition to preserving existing ones. Perhaps most importantly, these monastic communities served as irreplaceable libraries and knowledge vaults. In an era of immense political instability, amid invasions, shifting borders, and dynastic conflicts, the monastery often remained a steady, fortified island of preservation. Its thick walls protected the fragile parchment from the ravages of war and the elements. Within these libraries, texts that might have been lost to history elsewhere were carefully stored and maintained. This included not only religious works but also legal codes that defined justice, historical chronicles that recorded the deeds of kings, and even early literary works that captured the spirit of the people. The monks were the guardians of memory, the keepers of a cultural flame that they ensured would never be extinguished. Through their quiet, dedicated labor, the Glagolitic script was not frozen in time but was actively refined and subtly adapted to linguistic changes, ensuring its relevance and ensuring that this unique alphabet would leave an enduring legacy far beyond the lifetime of any single king or empire. Think of the medieval merchant, a figure of immense importance and mobility, whose pack animals and river barges carried far more than just silks, spices, and amber. They were the unsung couriers of culture, and among their most precious, if unintended, cargo was the written word. As these traders moved along the continent's great commercial arteries, the ancient amber road connecting the Baltic to the Adriatic, the bustling Danube River route winding through the heart of Europe, and a web of overland paths linking major towns, they did more than just transport goods. They carried the Glagolitic script, unwittingly seeding it into new soils far from its Byzantine origins. A merchant's ledger, meticulously detailing a transaction in the distinctive curved characters, was left behind in a trading post. A letter of credit written to guarantee payment to a partner in a distant city introduced the strange alphabet to a new audience. Even a simple inventory list, tossed aside after its use, served as a curious sample of this writing system for anyone who might pick it up. This constant, low-level exposure through the most practical of documents made the script a familiar sight in bustling ports and busy market squares, slowly demystifying it and weaving it into the everyday fabric of commercial life across the continent. The true powerhouses of this cultural exchange were the emerging commercial centers, cities that thrived at the crossroads of these trade routes. Places like Prague in Bohemia and Krakow in Poland became magnetic hubs, drawing merchants from the Slavic south and east as well as German, Jewish, and Italian traders from the west. In these vibrant, polyglot marketplaces, a common language of commerce was essential, and for dealings within the Slavic world, that language was increasingly written in Glagolitic. The script's utility was its greatest ambassador. Its precise phonetic nature made it perfect for drafting clear, unambiguous contracts for the sale of goods, whether it was recording the exact quality of furs from Novgorod, the quantity of wax from Prussia, or the price of salt from Wieliczka. A deal brokered between a Croatian merchant and a Polish buyer, documented in Glagolitic, provided a reliable, durable record that could be referred to long after the parties had gone their separate ways. This practicality fostered trust and efficiency, making the script an invaluable asset for anyone looking to engage seriously in regional trade. The counting houses and merchant halls of these cities effectively became informal schools for the script, where its visual patterns and legal authority were absorbed by a growing commercial class. This economic adoption had a cascading effect, pulling the script upward from the realm of commerce into that of urban administration and law. As these trading cities grew wealthier and more complex, their town councils needed sophisticated methods to manage their prosperity. They began to keep official registers of property transactions, tax rolls, and municipal decrees. In many Slavic-speaking regions, Glagolitic naturally became the script of choice for these records. Its use in a city's official charter or a guild's rulebook elevated its status from a mere commercial tool to a symbol of civic authority and local identity. This was a crucial step in its dissemination. It was no longer just something used by traveling merchants, but was now embedded in the very governance of powerful, influential cities. The script's journey from a missionary's parchment to a merchant's ledger to a town clerk's archive illustrates a fascinating path of cultural influence, one that was driven not by imperial decree or religious dogma, but by the relentless, practical demands of economics and the universal human desire for clear, trustworthy communication. It was through the mundane, yet vital, act of recording a fair trade that Glagolitic secured its place as a continental force. Yet for all its profound integration into the spiritual and economic life of the Slavs, the Glagolitic script's journey was never a smooth, unchallenged ascent. Its very success ignited a fierce backlash from established powers who saw this new alphabet not as a tool of enlightenment, but as a direct threat to their own influence. The most formidable opposition came from the West, from the heart of the Roman Catholic Church. To the Latin clergy, the sacred liturgy had a single, immutable language, their own. The introduction of a vernacular script like Glagolitic, which allowed the Mass to be celebrated in Old Church Slavonic, was viewed with deep suspicion and outright hostility. It was seen as a dangerous innovation that could shatter the unity of the Christian world, creating a splinter branch of the Church beyond Rome's control. This wasn't just a theological debate, it was a struggle for authority. A priest who could read the scriptures in his own tongue without needing a Latin-trained bishop to interpret them was a priest who was far less dependent on the hierarchy in Rome. This fear of diminished power led to concrete action. In regions like Pannonia and Moravia, after the deaths of Cyril and Methodius, their disciples were arrested, imprisoned, or violently expelled by Frankish bishops loyal to the Pope. There were concerted efforts to purge the new script, with authorities ordering Glagolitic texts burned and threatening those who used them with accusations of heresy. The Church's goal was clear: to extinguish this linguistic rebellion and reassert the absolute dominance of Latin as the one true language of faith. This pressure from the West was mirrored by challenges from the East, from the very empire that had originally sponsored the script's creation. The Byzantine Empire, while initially supportive, always viewed its cultural exports as tools for extending its own soft power. The expectation was that the converted Slavs would remain within the Byzantine orbit, using a script that was ultimately a gift from Constantinople. However, as Slavic rulers like Tsar Simon of Bulgaria began to use Glagolitic to forge their own independent kingdoms and even patriarchates, the Byzantine attitude shifted from patronage to unease. The empire began to promote the use of Greek in diplomatic and ecclesiastical matters, pressuring Slavic elites to adopt the more prestigious imperial language for high-level affairs. This created a fascinating cultural tension. A Slavic court might use Glagolitic for its internal administration and national church, while simultaneously employing Greek for correspondence with the Byzantine emperor, navigating a delicate balance between asserting independence and maintaining valuable political alliances. This push and pull meant that Glagolitic often had to fight for its place not against one monolithic opponent, but against two, each representing a different model of cultural and religious imperialism. Yet, in the face of this immense pressure, the script did not simply vanish. Its deep roots in Slavic society gave it a remarkable resilience. It persisted in the one place its opponents could not easily reach: the hearts and daily practices of the people. In remote monasteries, monks continued to copy texts in secret, safeguarding the literary tradition. Along the Adriatic coast, particularly in Croatia, local clergy and nobility fiercely defended Glagolitic as a powerful symbol of their unique identity, a badge of distinction that set them apart from both Italian Latin influence and Serbian Cyrillic tradition. They adapted brilliantly to the pressure, not through direct confrontation, but through a strategy of coexistence and adaptation. In many areas, a fascinating compromise emerged. The Roman Church, realizing it could not fully stamp out the practice, made a rare concession. In a handful of dioceses in Croatia, priests were granted a special dispensation from the Vatican to use the Glagolitic script and Old Church Slavonic in the liturgy, a unique exception that allowed the Slavonic rite to survive under the umbrella of Rome. This wasn't a victory in the sense of total dominance, but rather a testament to the script's deep entrenchment. It had become so woven into the local culture that suppressing it entirely was impossible. The story of this resistance isn't just a tale of conflict. It's a powerful demonstration of how a cultural innovation, once it takes root in the soil of popular identity, can withstand even the most powerful external forces, adapting and enduring in ways its creators could never have imagined. This remarkable adaptability was the script's secret weapon for longevity. While the core mission of Glagolitic was to create unity, its practical application across a vast and varied continent naturally gave rise to distinct regional flavors. A scribe in a busy Bulgarian chancery, pressured to produce legal documents quickly, might streamline a complex character, simplifying its curves to save precious time and ink. Meanwhile, a monk on a remote Croatian island, working on a luxurious illuminated gospel with no such time constraints, might elaborate those same letters into even more intricate decorative forms. Over generations, these small, localized choices accumulated, creating subtle but noticeable variations in how the alphabet was written from region to region. This wasn't a sign of fragmentation or decline. On the contrary, it was a sign of a living, breathing script organically integrating itself into the daily needs and artistic sensibilities of different communities. The script was proving it could be both a universal standard and a flexible tool, capable of accommodating local preferences without losing its fundamental identity. The most significant evolution, however, came from its interaction with a newcomer, the Cyrillic alphabet. Developed by the disciples of Cyril and Methodius in the First Bulgarian Empire, Cyrillic was not a rival creation but rather a brilliant adaptation. It took the elegant phonetic principles of Glagolitic, its perfect fit for the Slavic language, and married them to the more familiar and simpler graphical forms of the Greek alphabet. This hybrid was a masterstroke of practical design. For many, Cyrillic characters were easier and faster to learn and write, which contributed to its rapid adoption, particularly in the Eastern Orthodox Slavic world. This led to a fascinating period of coexistence and cross-pollination. In many areas, especially in the Balkans, scribes were fluent in both scripts. It was not uncommon to find manuscripts that began with a heading in the stately, formal Cyrillic before switching into the more curvaceous Glagolitic for the main body of text, or even for a single scribe to use both alphabets interchangeably within the same document. This wasn't a competition, it was a collaborative evolution. Glagolitic directly influenced the structure and soul of Cyrillic, ensuring that the linguistic legacy of Cyril and Methodius would continue, even as the visual container for that legacy began to change. These adaptations were never just about aesthetics or convenience. They were deeply intertwined with the seismic political and cultural shifts sweeping across medieval Europe. The expansion of the Ottoman Empire into the Balkans, for instance, disrupted the monastic networks that had been the primary guardians of the Glagolitic tradition. In these changing landscapes, the simpler and more widely used Cyrillic alphabet often gained a practical advantage for administrative and commercial purposes. Meanwhile, the intellectual movements of the Renaissance and later, the Reformation placed a new emphasis on classical languages and the printing press, which initially favored the Latin alphabet. The Glagolitic script, in response, didn't stubbornly resist but instead strategically retreated and consolidated. It became more specialized, focusing its energy on the niches where it remained strongest and most cherished, primarily in the liturgy of the coastal Catholic Slavs and in the cherished, traditional art of manuscript illumination. This ability to pivot, to find new purpose in a changing world, is what truly demonstrates its dynamic nature. It evolved from a continent-spanning standard to a powerful symbol of regional identity and enduring faith, proving that a writing system's strength isn't just in its widespread use, but in its deep, unbreakable connection to the culture it serves. Yet the true measure of the Glagolitic script's integration into daily life is found not in the grand artifacts, but in the quiet, personal moments it helped to preserve. Imagine a merchant's wife in a bustling Adriatic port town, sitting by a candle in the evening, carefully recording the week's household expenses in a ledger. Her entries, written in a confident, if not overly elegant hand, note the cost of wool, the price of fish, and the payment made to the local carpenter. This was not a document meant for a king's archive or a monastery's library. It was a practical tool for managing a family's prosperity. The fact that she used Glagolitic for this intimate task speaks volumes. It tells us the script was not reserved for the elite but was a functional part of the domestic sphere, a trusted system for bringing order to the complexities of everyday economics. Her ledger is a silent testament to a level of functional literacy that extended beyond the professional classes, suggesting that the ability to read and write these characters provided a tangible advantage in managing one's affairs, a small but significant form of personal power and organization in a challenging world. This personal engagement with the written word extended into the most spiritual corners of life. For the average person, faith was not an abstract concept but a daily practice, and Glagolitic was its medium. While full Bibles were rare and expensive, smaller, more affordable religious texts began to circulate. A family might own a psalter or a book of hours, a personal prayer book written in Glagolitic that allowed them to participate more fully in the rhythms of devotion. A farmer, after a long day in the fields, could open this book and recite the prayers in his own language, finding comfort and connection without the need for a priest to act as an intermediary. This personal ownership of faith was revolutionary for its time. It fostered a direct, intimate relationship with the divine that was deeply empowering. The script became a bridge between the formal liturgy of the church and the private piety of the home, making the sacred accessible and embedding itself into the most personal moments of reflection, hope, and grief. Perhaps the most democratic and human of all its uses was also the most ephemeral: graffiti. Carved into the soft stone of church walls, etched onto wooden beams, or scratched into the plaster of public buildings, these informal inscriptions are a powerful reminder that the script belonged to the people. A pilgrim visiting a distant shrine might carve his name and a short prayer in Glagolitic characters as a permanent record of his journey and devotion. Lovers would inscribe their names, a simple declaration of existence and affection that has outlasted empires. Some graffiti even reveals a sense of humor or annoyance, a cartoonish drawing of a local bishop next to a witty comment, or a complaint about a merchant's high prices. These markings were not commissioned by the powerful, they were the unfiltered voice of the common citizen using the shared script to say, "I was here." This practice demonstrates a casual familiarity and comfort with the alphabet that is utterly at odds with our image of medieval literacy. It shows that Glagolitic was not seen as a distant, formal code, but as a living, breathing tool for expression, available to anyone with a sharp stone and something to say, forever weaving the stories of ordinary people into the very walls of their world. Yet the true canvas for this artistic explosion was the Illuminated Manuscript, where the Glagolitic script transcended mere communication to become a central element of a breathtaking visual symphony. Within the quiet Scriptoria of monasteries, scribes who were also trained artists embarked on projects that could consume years of their lives. They began with the text itself, carefully copying the sacred words in a rich black ink. But then the transformation began. They would leave generous spaces for initials, the starting letters of important passages. These were not mere letters, they were portals into another world. Using brushes with bristles as fine as a single hair, they would outline these large characters with intricate geometric patterns, interlocking knots, delicate vines, and spirals that seemed to hold a mystical significance. Then came the color. They ground precious minerals into vibrant powders, deep ultramarine from lapis lazuli, brilliant vermilion from cinnabar, and lush greens from malachite, each mixed with egg white or gum arabic to create luminous paints. The most sacred texts received the ultimate embellishment, delicate leaves of beaten gold, carefully applied to the parchment to make the pages shimmer and glow in the candlelight of a church altar, as if the divine words themselves were radiating light. Among these masterpieces, the Codex Zografensis stands as a stunning testament to this art form. This gospel book, created in the 10th or 11th century, is a marvel of preservation and beauty. Its pages are filled with text in a stately Glagolitic hand, but it is the full-page miniatures that truly astonish. They depict the four evangelists Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, each rendered with a serene, contemplative grace. Their robes are painted in rich, flowing colors, and they are often shown seated within architectural frames that echo the Byzantine style, yet the inscriptions labeling them are proudly in Glagolitic. The pages seem to hum with a quiet, spiritual energy, a perfect marriage of faith and artistic devotion. These manuscripts were never meant to be hidden away. They were the most valuable objects a church or monastery possessed, carried in processions on holy days and displayed open on the altar during the most important services. They were not just read, they were experienced. Their visual splendor was intended to elevate the soul, to convey the majesty of the scriptures through beauty as well as through words, making the Glagolitic script an inseparable part of that transcendent experience. This artistic impulse, once awakened, could not be contained within the pages of books. The unique, beautiful forms of the Glagolitic letters began to migrate onto other mediums, becoming a recognizable decorative motif across the Slavic world. In churches and wealthy homes, skilled artisans began to incorporate the script into embroidery. Liturgical vestments like stoles and altar cloths were adorned with elegant Glagolitic inscriptions, weaving prayers and sacred phrases directly into the fabric worn by priests during Mass. In regions like Dalmatia, the tradition of Glagolitic woodcarving flourished. Misa records the small shelves on the underside of choir seats that provided monks a slight rest during long services were often carved with whimsical or pious scenes, sometimes accompanied by a Glagolitic word or two. More prominently, entire choir stalls, pulpits, and even church doors were embellished with panels featuring carved inscriptions, turning functional ecclesiastical furniture into proclamations of faith and cultural identity. Perhaps the most public and powerful use of the script beyond the manuscript was in architectural decoration. Stonemasons carefully chiseled Glagolitic texts into the very fabric of churches themselves. These inscriptions can be found framing doorways, running along the bases of frescoes, and encircling altars. In some churches, entire passages of scripture or dedicatory prayers are etched permanently into the stone walls, ensuring that the building itself would speak to the congregation in the sacred Slavic tongue for centuries. This practice blended the spiritual and artistic purposes completely. The words were a prayer in themselves, and their beautiful execution was an offering to God. Icons, too, became a new canvas. While the central image was a holy figure, the borders and backgrounds of these painted panels often featured finely written Glagolitic text identifying the saint or quoting a relevant prayer, merging the visual power of the image with the linguistic power of the word. This pervasive presence in art and architecture meant that the Glagolitic script was not something people encountered only in books. It was woven into the environment of their daily and spiritual lives, a constant, beautiful reminder of their unique heritage and the profound creative brilliance it inspired. Yet even the most resilient of traditions cannot withstand the relentless tides of change forever. The slow and gradual retreat of the Glagolitic script from the continental stage was not the result of a single cataclysm, but a confluence of powerful forces that reshaped the cultural and political landscape of Europe. The first and perhaps most significant challenge came from within the family of Slavic alphabets themselves. The Cyrillic script, developed by the disciples of Cyril and Methodius in the First Bulgarian Empire, began to gain tremendous momentum. While it shared the same brilliant phonetic foundation as Glagolitic, its characters were visually simpler and bore a closer resemblance to the prestigious Greek alphabet. This graphical familiarity made it easier to learn and faster to write, offering a practical advantage for administrators and merchants who valued efficiency. In the Eastern Orthodox Slavic world, particularly under the powerful influence of the Bulgarian and later the Russian empires, Cyrillic became the undisputed script of state, church, and commerce. This wasn't a hostile takeover but a quiet, steady shift in preference. The two scripts even coexisted peacefully for centuries in many regions, but over time, the utilitarian benefits of Cyrillic's simpler forms saw it gradually supplant its more intricate predecessor across vast swaths of territory, from the Balkans to the frontiers of Muscovy. This linguistic evolution was dramatically accelerated by profound political upheavals. The relentless expansion of the Ottoman Empire into the heart of the Balkans in the 14th and 15th centuries dealt a devastating blow to the very institutions that had nurtured and protected the Glagolitic tradition. The Ottoman conquest severed vital cultural and ecclesiastical networks. Monasteries, those ancient power plants of Slavic literacy, were often destroyed, disbanded, or fell into disrepair. The scholarly communities that had meticulously copied and illuminated manuscripts for generations were dispersed, and the steady production of new Glagolitic texts ground to a halt in many conquered regions. The new Ottoman administration, while often tolerant, naturally promoted its own bureaucratic languages, Turkish and Arabic, for official matters, further pushing local scripts to the margins of daily life. The vibrant exchange of ideas and texts between Slavic centers was choked off, isolating Glagolitic communities from one another and starving them of the renewal that comes from constant cultural contact. The script, once a symbol of unity across a vast network, became a casualty of fractured geopolitics. Simultaneously, a great religious revolution brewing in Western Europe would introduce a new and unexpected challenger. The Protestant Reformation of the 16th century and the Catholic counter-reformation it provoked placed a powerful new emphasis on the use of vernacular languages in worship. This might seem like it would have been an opportunity for Glagolitic, which had pioneered this very idea centuries earlier. However, the context had changed entirely. The Reformation promoted vernaculars, but almost exclusively in the Latin alphabet, as reformers like Martin Luther translated the Bible into German and other languages using the familiar Roman letters. The Catholic Church, in its counter-offensive, also embraced the strategic use of local languages to reconnect with congregations, but again, typically using the Latin script for consistency and control. This massive, continent-wide push for vernacular worship ironically ended up marginalizing the one script that had already perfected it. For the Slavic languages, this often meant a new translation into the Latin alphabet, which was now backed by the immense institutional power of the Church and the new technology of the printing press. This created a powerful new standard that further encroached on the domains where Glagolitic had once reigned supreme. By the 16th century, these combined pressures had dramatically reduced the script's footprint. Its use contracted from a continent-spanning force to a handful of stubborn regional strongholds, primarily along the remote, rocky coast of the Adriatic Sea, where it was guarded not just as a tool, but as a sacred heirloom of a glorious past. And so, as the Glagolitic script receded from the grand stages of empires and the bustling trade routes of the continent, its flame did not extinguish. Instead, it found refuge burning with a quiet, stubborn intensity in a few isolated corners of Europe, where it became not just a writing system, but a sacred emblem of identity. The most remarkable of these sanctuaries was not a mighty kingdom, but a scattering of rugged islands and a narrow strip of coastline along the Adriatic Sea, in what is now Croatia. Here, on the islands of Kajake, Kres, and in the region of Istria, the Glagolitic alphabet performed a centuries-long act of defiance. Long after the rest of the Slavic world had transitioned to Cyrillic or Latin, the local clergy here continued to say the Mass and read the scriptures in Old Church Slavonic, written in the elegant, curling letters of their ancestors. This was no mere nostalgia, it was a conscious, fiercely held choice. For these communities, the script was a powerful symbol of their unique position at the crossroads of worlds, Slavic in tongue and liturgy, yet Catholic in their allegiance to Rome. They had secured a rare and precious dispensation from the Vatican, a privilege allowing them to use their ancient Slavic rite within the Roman Church. This official permission transformed their preservation efforts from a clandestine act into a point of immense local pride. The script became woven into the very fabric of their daily spiritual life, a visual declaration that they were both fully Catholic and distinctly Slavic, a duality they guarded with deep devotion. Village priests, often the most educated members of their communities, became the unsung heroes of this preservation, teaching the script to new generations and ensuring that the beautiful, handwritten missals and breviaries continued to be used in parish churches well into the 19th century. Far to the east, in the remote mountain monasteries of Bulgaria and Macedonia, a different kind of endurance was taking place. In these Orthodox strongholds, the Cyrillic alphabet had long since become the standard for all official and liturgical purposes. Yet the old Glagolitic script never completely vanished. It lingered like a ghost in the margins of history, a cherished secret kept alive by scholarly monks who viewed it as their sacred patrimony. In the silent scriptoria of places like the Rila Monastery, scribes who were copying new texts in Cyrillic might occasionally stumble upon a much older, decaying Glagolitic manuscript in their library vaults. Rather than discard it, they would often engage in a fascinating act of reverence. They would carefully transcribe a difficult passage, a particularly beautiful prayer, or even just a handful of characters from the old script into the margins of their new work. These glosses, as they are known, are like whispered conversations across the centuries. They are evidence of a continuous thread of memory, a deliberate effort by these guardians of culture to preserve a piece of their deepest origins, even as the world around them had moved on. These were not public displays of cultural identity, but private acts of scholarly piety, ensuring that the knowledge of how to read and write the ancient letters of Cyril and Methodius was never truly lost. These regional strongholds, though geographically and culturally separate, served a common, vital purpose. They became living repositories of knowledge. They were the arks that carried the Glagolitic script through the flood of change, safeguarding it not as a dead relic, but as a living tradition. In Croatia, the script was kept alive through active, daily use in worship and community life. In the Balkan monasteries, it was preserved through the meticulous, studious work of individuals who understood its historical significance. In both cases, the driving force was a profound emotional and cultural attachment that transcended mere practicality. This was about soul, not just utility. It was about maintaining a tangible connection to a glorious, independent past, a time when their ancestors had possessed a unique written word that was entirely their own. These pockets of resistance, these islands within islands, ensured that the script survived long enough for a future generation of scholars and nationalists to rediscover it. They kept the embers glowing, waiting for the right moment in history to be fanned back into a flame that would once again capture the imagination of a people. But just as the script seemed destined to fade into the whispering echoes of history, a new dawn of discovery was breaking across Europe. The 19th century, an age of sweeping revolutions and rising national consciousness, awakened a powerful hunger for roots and identity among the Slavic peoples. This cultural reawakening turned the gaze of scholars and patriots alike toward the distant past, searching for evidence of a glorious heritage that could rival those of Western Europe. In this climate of intellectual fervor, the long-forgotten Glagolitic script was suddenly rediscovered, not as a dusty relic, but as a shining emblem of ancient sophistication and autonomy. The driving force behind this renaissance was a remarkable blend of rigorous academic inquiry and passionate nationalist sentiment. Pioneering philologists and historians, armed with new scientific methods, began to systematically track down and examine the surviving Glagolitic manuscripts that had been gathering dust in monastic libraries and private collections for centuries. The Czech scholar Josef Dobrovský, often called the patriarch of Slavic philology, played a foundational role. Though initially skeptical about Glagolitic's origins, his meticulous comparative work laid the essential groundwork for understanding its place in the development of Slavic languages. He was followed by a generation of dedicated researchers like the Croatian Vatrislav Jajic, whose monumental studies and critical editions of ancient texts didn't just decipher the script's contents, they painstakingly reconstructed its entire history, tracing its evolution and proving its profound significance as Europe's first truly original alphabet created for a specific people. This wasn't merely an academic exercise conducted in ivory towers. It was a mission charged with cultural importance. Their work provided the intellectual backbone for the Slavic national revivals, movements sweeping from the Czech lands and Slovenia to Croatia and Bulgaria. For these emerging nations, often chafing under the control of the Austro-Hungarian or Ottoman empires, the Glagolitic script became a powerful political symbol. It was tangible, irrefutable proof that their ancestors had possessed a high culture of their own, complete with a unique written language and an independent Christian tradition long before foreign domination. It was a direct rebuttal to those who claimed the Slavs were historically inferior or lacking in civilization. This symbolic power led to a very public celebration of the script. Museums and national libraries, themselves institutions of the new national consciousness, began actively acquiring and proudly exhibiting Glagolitic artifacts. Suddenly, these manuscripts were not hidden away but displayed under glass as crown jewels of national heritage, transforming public perception and raising awareness among a populace that had largely forgotten this part of its past. The script appeared in the iconography of the time, on monuments, in the logos of cultural societies, and in the literature of the Romantic nationalists who wove it into the fabric of their emerging national myths. The journey of rediscovery did not end in the 19th century. The tools of modern scholarship have only deepened our understanding. Advanced linguistic analysis has unpacked the script's ingenious phonetic precision, revealing just how perfectly it was tailored to the Slavic tongue. The science of paleography has allowed experts to date manuscripts with greater accuracy and trace the fascinating regional variations in the script's form across time and geography. Cutting-edge technologies like multispectral imaging can now even recover texts that were scraped away and written over, known as palimpsests, uncovering lost layers of literary history. What began as a nationalist project has matured into a rich, interdisciplinary field of study. Today, Glagolitic is studied not as a quaint curiosity, but as an essential key that unlocks a deeper understanding of medieval Slavic civilization, its intellectual ambitions, its spiritual depth, its legal frameworks, and its interconnected world. This centuries-long project of rediscovery has ensured that the script, once nearly erased by the tides of history, has now been permanently and proudly secured in the annals of human achievement. This remarkable alphabet, once the administrative and spiritual backbone of a continent, has found a powerful second life in the modern era, not as a tool for daily use, but as an irreplaceable key for unlocking the past. For linguists and philologists, Glagolitic manuscripts are nothing short of a time capsule, offering an extraordinarily clear window into the sounds and structures of the earliest recorded Slavic language. Because the script was so meticulously designed from the ground up to match the phonetic reality of 9th century Slavic speech, it captures nuances that other contemporary writing systems simply miss. Each character is a precise recording of a specific sound, free from the compromises that come with adapting an existing alphabet for a new language. This allows scholars to reconstruct the pronunciation of Old Church Slavonic with a surprising degree of confidence. They can hear the echoes of how words were truly spoken over 1,000 years ago, understanding the subtle differences between nasalized vowels or the exact quality of a sibilant consonant. This isn't just an academic exercise, it provides the foundational evidence for tracing the entire evolutionary tree of Slavic languages, showing how a single ancestral tongue branched into the diverse family of Russian, Polish, Czech, Serbian, and all the others we know today. By comparing the precise phonetic map laid out by Glagolitic with later texts, linguists can chart the fascinating paths of sound changes, grammatical shifts, and vocabulary development that have shaped the linguistic landscape of Eastern Europe. In this way, the script continues to be an active participant in cutting-edge research, its ancient pages constantly revealing new secrets about the history of human communication. Perhaps the most tangible and widespread legacy of Glagolitic is the alphabet used by hundreds of millions of people today, Cyrillic. It is a common misconception that Cyril and Methodius created the Cyrillic script that bears one of their names. They did not. Their masterpiece was Glagolitic. Cyrillic emerged slightly later, developed by their disciples in the First Bulgarian Empire. Recognizing the sheer brilliance of the phonetic system their teachers had engineered, these scholars made a pragmatic and visionary decision. They preserved the entire logical and phonological structure of Glagolitic, the way it had one unique symbol for every distinct sound in the language, but they swapped out the complex, original characters for new ones. These new letters were heavily based on the elegant and prestigious Greek uncial script, with additional characters invented to represent those uniquely Slavic sounds that Greek couldn't capture. This was a masterstroke of cultural synthesis. It created an alphabet that was immediately more familiar and acceptable to a world where Greek was a language of empire and learning, while still retaining the perfect phonetic accuracy that was Glagolitic's greatest triumph. So when you look at the Russian letter sha for the sh sound or cha for the ch sound, you are seeing the direct intellectual inheritance of Glagolitic, a system that ensured the Slavic language could be written with perfect clarity. Cyrillic is, in essence, Glagolitic's soul dressed in Greek clothing, a powerful hybrid that ensured the survival of the brothers' visionary work in a new and enduring form. Beyond the halls of academia, the spirit of the Glagolitic script is vigorously kept alive through vibrant cultural celebration, particularly in Croatia where it endured the longest. There, it is far more than a historical footnote. It is a potent national symbol and a source of immense local pride. The town of Bashkar on the island of Kayake, home to the famous Bashkar tablet, one of the oldest known monuments containing Glagolitic, becomes a living museum during cultural festivals. Actors dressed as medieval scribes demonstrate the art of calligraphy, while locals and visitors alike partake in workshops to learn the basic letters. Academic conferences regularly convene in coastal towns, where scholars from around the world present new findings on Glagolitic paleography and linguistics, ensuring the field remains dynamic and evolving. This isn't just about looking backward, it's about actively engaging with heritage. Furthermore, the script's unique and beautiful aesthetic has captured the imagination of modern artists and designers. Its elegant, looping forms appear in contemporary logo design, evocative tattoo art, and stunning jewelry collections. Graphic novelists and filmmakers sometimes incorporate Glagolitic characters to lend a sense of historical depth or mystical antiquity to their work. This artistic revival demonstrates that the script's value is not merely historical or linguistic, but also profoundly visual. It speaks to a modern desire to connect with something authentic and ancient, its distinctive forms offering a graphic alternative to the familiar Latin and Cyrillic alphabets. From the meticulous work of a linguist reconstructing an ancient vowel sound to a designer drawing inspiration from a 1,000-year-old manuscript, the Glagolitic script continues to resonate, a testament to its enduring power as both a precise instrument of science and a timeless muse for creativity. To truly grasp the genius of the Glagolitic script, we must place it side by side with the other great writing systems of its era. The medieval world was a tapestry of alphabets, each with its own history and purpose. The Latin script used throughout Western Europe was a powerful legacy of the Roman Empire, but its origin story is one of adaptation, not invention. The Romans had borrowed and modified their letters from the Etruscans, who in turn had taken them from the Greeks. This means Latin was essentially a repurposed tool, a set of symbols designed for one language that was then forced to serve another. This led to inherent inefficiencies. Latin struggled to represent the unique sounds of the Slavic tongue. How do you accurately write down a soft SHCH or a specific nasal vowel using only the 23 letters of the classical Latin alphabet? The result was often clumsy approximations or confusing letter combinations that failed to capture the true spoken word. Glagolitic faced no such compromise. It was a custom-built instrument, engineered from the ground up with the precise phonetic needs of the Slavs in mind. Every distinct sound in their language received its own unique, unambiguous symbol. This wasn't a repurposed tool, it was a precision device, and it gave its users a clarity of written expression that Latin simply could not offer. The comparison with the majestic Greek uncial script, the formal bookend of the Byzantine Empire, is equally revealing. Greek was the language of prestige, philosophy, and imperial power. It was a script with a long and glorious history, and its influence is visually apparent in the later Cyrillic alphabet. But for the Slavic peoples, Greek was also the script of a foreign, albeit admired, empire. Adopting it wholesale would have been a form of cultural submission, tying their literary identity directly to Constantinople. Glagolitic, by contrast, was a declaration of independence. Its characters were not borrowed, they were conceived anew. Their intricate, looping forms, often described as a unique fusion of curves and angles, bore no direct, obvious resemblance to any existing alphabet. This visual distinctiveness was a powerful statement. It announced to the world that the Slavs were not mere cultural satellites of Byzantium or Rome, but a people with the intellectual capacity to create their own unique vehicle for thought, faith, and law. It was a symbol of self-determination etched in ink. When we look to the north, we encounter the runic alphabets, like the angular Phonetic used by Germanic and Scandinavian peoples. Runes possess a certain mystical allure, but their application was fundamentally different. They were perfectly suited for short, impactful inscriptions, carving a name on a weapon, marking a runestone to commemorate a hero, or inscribing a brief protective charm on an amulet. They were the script of monuments and markers, not of lengthy discourse. Glagolitic, on the other hand, was conceived for literature and liturgy from its very inception. It was designed for the flow of connected text, for the endless copying of lengthy gospel books, legal codes, and chronicles. Its curvilinear forms were crafted for the scribe's hand, allowing for faster, more comfortable writing across vast expanses of parchment. It was a system built for the endurance of ideas, capable of supporting the entire intellectual weight of an emerging civilization, something the runic systems were never intended to do. Perhaps the most fascinating aesthetic comparison is with the celebrated Irish insular script, developed in the monasteries of the British Isles. Like Glagolitic, the insular script was renowned for its breathtaking decorative potential. Irish scribes transformed their letters into intricate works of art, weaving them into complex knots and spirals that made each page a masterpiece of illumination. Glagolitic scribes achieved a very similar artistic zenith, producing manuscripts of stunning beauty that rivaled anything from Western Europe. But here again, the purpose behind the beauty differed. The elaborate decoration of insular script often served to glorify the Latin text itself, the sacred language of the Church. The dazzling artistry of a Glagolitic manuscript, however, glorified the Slavic language. The beauty of the page was in service to the vernacular, making the local tongue worthy of the highest artistic and spiritual expression. This subtle difference highlights Glagolitic's unique role. It was a script that could match any other in artistic splendor, but it did so not to elevate a foreign tongue, but to celebrate and sanctify its own. But the story of the Glagolitic script, like that of any great historical innovation, is shrouded in layers of myth and misunderstanding, tales that often say more about the people who told them than about the script itself. One of the most persistent and romantic myths is that of its divine or mystical origin. For centuries, a popular belief held that the alphabet was not a human invention at all, but a gift from heaven, its intricate characters divinely revealed to the saintly brothers. This legend speaks to the profound reverence people held for the written word, elevating it to a sacred mystery. Another theory, which gained traction in later periods, attempted to connect the script's unusual shapes to the runic alphabets of Northern Europe or even to ancient Semitic scripts, suggesting it was merely an adaptation of something older and foreign. These stories, while fascinating, have been carefully examined and largely dismissed by modern scholarship. Through meticulous analysis of the letters and historical context, linguists and historians have shown that Glagolitic is a work of stunning originality. Its design is not a haphazard borrowing but a conscious, brilliant synthesis. likely drawing on Cyril's deep knowledge of various writing systems to create something entirely new and perfectly tailored for its purpose. It stands as a testament to human ingenuity, not supernatural intervention, a fact that in no way diminishes its achievement. Another common misconception paints a picture of a clean, total replacement, as if the simpler Cyrillic alphabet simply arrived and Glagolitic promptly vanished from use. This is a dramatic but inaccurate oversimplification of history. The reality was far more nuanced and interesting. For hundreds of years, these two Slavic alphabets existed in a dynamic and often overlapping relationship. In many regions, particularly in the Balkans, scribes were fluently bilingual in both scripts. It's not at all uncommon to find manuscripts that begin with a formal heading in Cyrillic before seamlessly transitioning into the main body of text written in Glagolitic. Some scribes even used them interchangeably on the same page, perhaps using one for the text and the other for marginal notes or commentaries. They weren't seen as rivals in a winner-take-all battle, but as two tools in a shared cultural toolbox, both serving the same ultimate goal of preserving the Slavic literary language. Cyrillic, with its graphical links to prestigious Greek, may have gained favor for certain official or formal documents, while Glagolitic retained a powerful traditional and sacred aura, especially in specific regions like the Croatian coast. This long period of coexistence and cross-pollination shows that the history of writing is rarely a story of simple replacement, but one of adaptation, overlap, and slow evolution. Perhaps the most limiting myth is the idea that the Glagolitic script was the exclusive property of a small, cloistered elite, that its use was confined to monks in remote monasteries and entirely separate from the lives of ordinary people. This view paints the medieval world as far more illiterate than it actually was, at least in certain Slavic regions. While it's true that the clergy were the primary guardians and most skilled practitioners of the script, evidence continues to emerge that suggests a wider sphere of literacy. The legal and commercial documents that have survived, such as property deeds, wills, and merchant contracts, indicate that a segment of the lay population, particularly among the nobility, wealthy merchants, and skilled artisans, possessed functional literacy. They could read and likely write well enough to conduct their business and safeguard their interests. Even more compelling are the personal, informal traces left behind. The graffiti etched into church walls, a pilgrim's name, a short prayer, a simple carving often written in Glagolitic, points to a casual familiarity with the alphabet that extended beyond professional scribes. This suggests that the script was not a distant, mysterious code, but a practical tool integrated into various levels of society, a visible and recognizable part of the everyday landscape for many. Dispelling these myths does more than just correct the historical record. It allows us to see the Glagolitic script for what it truly was: a sophisticated, human-made tool that evolved over time, was used by a broader cross-section of society than we often assume, and whose story is one of flexibility and endurance, not sudden obsolescence. By separating the fact from the fiction, we gain a clearer, richer appreciation for its monumental role in shaping the Slavic world. Yet centuries after its slow fade from daily use, the Glagolitic script would experience a resurrection of an entirely different kind, not in the quiet of a monastery, but in the heated atmosphere of the 19th century coffeehouse and the passionate gatherings of the urban intellectual elite. As waves of nationalism swept across Europe, Slavic peoples living under the Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires began a profound search for their own unique identity, a cultural bedrock upon which to build dreams of political autonomy. They needed symbols, tangible, powerful evidence of a glorious past that proved they were not merely subjects of foreign crowns, but a people with their own ancient history of sophistication and self-determination. And in the forgotten curves of the Glagolitic alphabet, they found exactly what they were looking for. This was no longer just a medieval writing system, it was rediscovered as a banner of defiance. In Croatia, where the script had never fully disappeared from liturgical use along the Adriatic coast, it was embraced with particular fervor. Activists and writers like Bishop Josip Juraj Strossmayer saw in Glagolitic a perfect rebuttal to those who claimed Slavic culture was inferior or derivative. Here was an alphabet that was not borrowed from Rome or Byzantium, but created uniquely for the Slavic tongue. It was living proof that their ancestors had possessed an advanced literary culture long before outside influences shaped their destiny. This wasn't just an academic point, it was political fuel. The script began to appear everywhere in the cultural output of the national revival, known as the Illyrian movement. Poets published verses using Glagolitic characters in their titles. Playwrights incorporated it into set designs for theatrical productions about heroic moments from history. Political pamphlets, often circulated secretly, used the ancient letters in their mastheads as a coded signal of solidarity and resistance, a visual declaration that the reader was part of a distinct national community dreaming of freedom. This symbolic power was not confined to Croatia. In the Czech lands, then chafing under the German-dominated administration of the Habsburg Empire, scholars and artists also turned to their earliest written heritage for inspiration. While the Czech language itself had transitioned to the Latin alphabet, the story of Cyril and Methodius and their Glagolitic creation became a foundational national myth. It was celebrated in paintings, epic poetry, and even in the name of an influential Prague publishing house. The narrative of two brothers bringing literacy and faith to the Slavs in their own language served as a powerful parallel to the contemporary struggle for the Czech language to be used in schools, government, and public life, a struggle against forced Germanization. The script became a metaphor for the right to self-expression, a potent reminder that their cultural and linguistic identity was ancient, valid, and worth fighting for. This revival reached its most poignant expression in public monuments and physical space. Towns and villages, particularly in regions with a strong historical connection to the early Slavic Church, began erecting statues not just of kings and warriors, but of the scribes and saints who had preserved their written heritage. In Velarad, in what is now the Czech Republic, a grand basilica became a national pilgrimage site dedicated to Cyril and Methodius, its walls adorned with frescoes depicting the brothers holding scrolls inscribed with Glagolitic letters. In Croatia, the Bashkar tablet, a stone inscription from the 11th century featuring Glagolitic text, was transformed from a local curiosity into a national treasure, its image reproduced on stamps, currency, and school textbooks. The script was literally carved into the landscape, making the national past visible and immutable. This strategic use of history had a very clear modern goal: to galvanize populations toward cultural and eventually political autonomy. By pointing to the Glagolitic era, nationalist leaders could argue that their nations were not recent inventions, but were reviving a statehood that had been interrupted by centuries of foreign domination. It provided a deep historical legitimacy to their movements, a sense that they were not creating something new, but reclaiming something ancient and rightfully theirs. The script's intricate, beautiful letters became a shorthand for this entire argument, a complex idea distilled into a single, powerful visual symbol that could be understood by everyone, from the university professor to the illiterate farmer. It fostered an immense sense of pride that was crucial for building the unity and confidence needed to challenge empires. Even today, this legacy endures. The Glagolitic alphabet appears on the euro coins minted in Croatia, on the logos of cultural institutions, and in the works of contemporary artists who continue to draw on it as a source of identity. Its journey from a 9th-century missionary tool to a 19th-century nationalist emblem to a modern marker of cultural pride shows, perhaps more than anything else, that a writing system can be far more than a way to record language. It can become the very soul of a people, a timeless vessel for their deepest hopes and their most enduring sense of self. Yet the journey of the Glagolitic script did not culminate in the quiet halls of museums or the specialized pages of academic journals. Instead, it has found a remarkable new lease on life in the very realm that once threatened to make it obsolete, the digital world. The 21st century has ushered in an unprecedented chapter in the script's long history, one defined not by parchment and quill, but by pixels and code. This ancient alphabet is undergoing a stunning digital resurrection, ensuring its survival and relevance for generations to come in ways its original creators could never have imagined. The foundational step in this modern revival was its formal adoption into the Unicode standard, the universal character encoding system that underpins all digital text. This seemingly technical achievement was in reality a monumental act of preservation. By assigning a unique digital code point to every single Glagolitic character, from the simplest curve to the most complex composite letter, Unicode effectively granted the script a permanent passport into the digital future. This means you can now type a Glagolitic text on a computer in Tokyo or a smartphone in Buenos Aires, and the characters will display correctly for anyone with a compatible font. This global interoperability has transformed the script from a static historical artifact into a dynamic, living medium for modern communication. Academics can now write papers citing original Glagolitic passages without relying on cumbersome images. Designers can incorporate the elegant letters into digital artwork. Most importantly, it allows for the creation of a vast new digital ecosystem built around the script itself. This ecosystem is flourishing through a wave of innovative online platforms and applications designed to demystify and teach the alphabet. Interactive websites and mobile apps now offer step-by-step tutorials that guide users through the character set, complete with audio pronunciations of the ancient phonetic values. These digital tutors provide immediate feedback, turning the once daunting task of learning a forgotten alphabet into an engaging and accessible experience. Language enthusiasts from around the globe, with no prior connection to Slavic culture, can now embark on the journey of deciphering these ancient letters from the comfort of their homes. Online communities and forums have sprung up where beginners can seek advice from experts, share their progress, and even practice writing in Glagolitic. This has democratized access to a form of knowledge that was once the exclusive domain of dedicated scholars and paleographers, creating a new, globally dispersed cohort of keepers for this linguistic tradition. Perhaps the most profound impact of digitization has been on the script's most precious artifacts, the fragile, Chinese letter old manuscripts themselves. Institutions like the Bavarian State Library in Munich and the National Library of Russia have undertaken massive digitization projects, using high-resolution scanners to create incredibly detailed digital surrogates of their priceless Glagolitic codices. These virtual museums break down the physical and geographical barriers that have protected these treasures for centuries. A student in Wisconsin can now zoom in on the Codex Asimanianus, examining the precise brushstrokes of an illumination or the subtle texture of the parchment with a clarity that might even surpass what is visible to the naked eye in a controlled library setting. Advanced spectral imaging techniques can even reveal text that has been erased or written over, known as palimpsests, uncovering lost layers of history without ever touching the delicate original. This remote access not only preserves the physical objects by reducing the need for handling, but also enables a new era of collaborative, international scholarship, as researchers from across the globe can study the same manuscript simultaneously. The revival has also migrated to the vibrant and fast-paced world of social media, where cultural heritage organizations and passionate individuals are using these platforms to reframe the narrative around Glagolitic. Instagram accounts dedicated to the script feature stunning close-up photographs of illuminated letters, transforming them into mesmerizing works of abstract art for a new audience. TikTok creators produce short, engaging videos explaining the history of Cyril and Methodius, or demonstrating how to write their names in the ancient alphabet. Hashtags like Glagolitic and Old Church Slavonic help curate these efforts, building a digital tapestry of content that celebrates the script's history and beauty. This approach successfully engages younger generations who might never set foot in a traditional museum, presenting the alphabet not as a dry academic subject, but as a cool, intriguing piece of historical culture. It fosters a sense of shared discovery and community, connecting people through a shared interest in this unique piece of the past. These collective digital initiatives represent far more than just a backup plan for history. They are an active, dynamic revival. They ensure the Glagolitic script is no longer a relic to be merely preserved under glass, but is a living, breathing part of our global cultural conversation. The digital age has provided the tools to connect its profound past with an innovative present, offering new opportunities for education, artistic expression, and community building that keep the script vibrantly relevant today. This modern embrace guarantees that the intricate curves and divine purpose of Europe's first original alphabet will continue to inspire and captivate, its voice amplified rather than silenced by the very technology that defines our modern world. What the long and winding story of the Glagolitic script reveals to us is a fundamental truth about human civilization, that the tools we use to record our thoughts are never neutral. They are not passive vessels but active forces that shape destiny. This forgotten alphabet was far more than a collection of characters. It was a technology of unity, a mechanism of faith, and an architecture for identity. Its creation in the 9th century was a deliberate act of cultural engineering, proving that a writing system, when perfectly tailored to the sounds and soul of a language, can become the most powerful glue to bind a people together. Before its arrival, the Slavic world was a mosaic of disparate tribes, each with its own dialect, making communication and collective action a constant challenge. Glagolitic provided a shared platform, a common code that could be understood from the Balkans to the Baltic. This standardization was the first and most crucial lesson, that a unified script creates a unified people, enabling not just the exchange of goods and ideas, but the very formation of a collective consciousness. It allowed for the drafting of laws that were recognized across kingdoms, for trade contracts that built trust between distant merchants, and for a literary culture that gave a scattered population a shared story of who they were. Yet the script's history also teaches a sobering lesson about the relentless nature of change and the critical importance of adaptability. Glagolitic's gradual decline was not a failure of its design, it was a masterpiece of linguistic precision. Its retreat was instead a response to a shifting world. The rise of the simpler, Greek-based Cyrillic alphabet offered a practical advantage in many regions. The tectonic shifts of geopolitics, like the Ottoman expansion that shattered the monastic networks which were the script's lifeblood, demonstrated that no cultural institution exists in a vacuum. It is subject to the pressures of empires, the economics of new technologies like the printing press, and the changing tides of religious reform. The script's story shows that longevity is not just about initial brilliance, but about the capacity to evolve, to find new niches, and to remain relevant in a landscape of constant transformation. Its persistence along the Croatian coast is a masterclass in this very adaptability. There, it negotiated a unique space within the Roman Catholic Church, transforming from a continental standard into a powerful, localized symbol of identity that could coexist with larger global forces. This points to perhaps the most enduring lesson of all, the incredible resilience of cultural identity and the profound emotional attachment people have to their heritage. Long after Glagolitic had ceased to be a practical tool for administration or commerce in most places, it endured. It survived in the whispered prayers of coastal priests and in the meticulous marginal notes of Bulgarian monks, not because it was the most efficient system available, but because it meant something. It was a tangible link to a glorious, independent past, a symbol of self-determination that said, "We have our own voice." This deep, almost visceral connection is what fueled its dramatic revival in the 19th century, transforming it from a liturgical artifact into a potent nationalist emblem for people seeking to throw off foreign rule. It became proof of a sophisticated indigenous civilization, a rallying point that inspired art, literature, and political movements. This teaches us that the value of a cultural artifact is never solely in its utility. It is in its power to symbolize who we are and where we come from. A script can become a soul. Finally, the modern digital rebirth of Glagolitic offers a hopeful lesson for our own era of rapid technological change. Its inclusion in the Unicode standard, the digitization of its ancient manuscripts, and its vibrant life on social media demonstrate that the past is not something static to be preserved under glass, but a living resource to be engaged with. We now have the tools not just to save cultural heritage from oblivion, but to inject it directly into the global conversation, making it accessible and exciting for new generations. The story of Glagolitic, therefore, is a continuous loop from its creation as a revolutionary tool, through its centuries of service and struggle, to its current status as a digitized symbol of pride. It reminds us that writing is one of humanity's most profound inventions, a technology that can build empires, carry faith across mountains, and preserve the essence of a people long after the last native speaker is gone. To study this script is to understand that the power of the word, once written down, truly can rule continents and echo through millennia. The Glagolitic script may no longer be in widespread use, but its legacy as the script that ruled a continent endures far beyond the faded ink of ancient manuscripts. From its brilliant creation by Cyril and Methodius to its profound role in weaving together the fabric of trade, faith, and culture, this alphabet did much more than record words. It actively shaped the medieval Slavic world, providing a unified voice to diverse peoples and empowering them to build a shared identity. Its story is a powerful testament to human innovation, resilience, and cultural pride, offering us timeless insights into how a simple set of symbols can unite and transform entire societies. As we reflect on this forgotten alphabet, we are reminded of the enduring importance of preserving our linguistic heritage, not as a relic of the past, but as a vital key to understanding who we are and the journeys we have taken. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through history. If you enjoyed exploring the story of the script that ruled a continent, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe for more deep dives into the forgotten corners of our past. Let us know in the comments what other lost scripts or ancient writing systems you would like to learn about.